G'day, this is my 1967 HR Holden, and it's what we'd call in the industry a survivor. It's an unrestored car, and most of the car's still the original paint even. So I'm going to leave it this way for as long as I possibly can because I enjoy the whole survivor look. One day I will restore it. It's fitted with a set of period mag wheels, and that brings us to today's topic. And now this is something that every one of us who owns a period car like this should know. The other day we were out driving in the Holden and we got a flat tyre. So we've run over something on the road and there's a pretty obvious puncture hole in the tyre there. So put the spare wheel on, got it home. Now this morning sent it into the tyre place to have the actual hole patched, put a plug in it to seal it off, and this wheel's also had a problem for some time where it's been weeping a bit of air around the rim. Now it's very minor, it takes a good 3-4 weeks for the tyre to leak down normally. So every couple of weeks I've been putting a bit of air in it. It hasn't really bothered me that much. But as there was another repair needing doing, I decided they could do the whole lot in one go. Now what they've done instead is they've put a tube in this wheel. Now I can hear a lot of you thinking out there, what's wrong with the tube, Rob? Plenty of wheels got tubes in them. There's nothing wrong with a tube when it's fitted correctly. I'll show you another wheel that a tube will fit correctly into. Now this is just a standard wheel for the same car, and you can see where the valve goes, it pokes out here sideways. Now the tubes are moulded so that when the tube's inflated, the valve's poking off on that angle. If we go back to our alloy wheel, the valve is actually standing straight up. So if we take our tube and force it around to have the valve standing up, it is going to crease and it's going to pull from this point. So what does that mean? Pretty simply, this is going to fail. And it fails because with the rotation of the tyre, the tube actually walks. Now if you look at any radial tyre, it is flat on the bottom. So it actually conforms to the shape of the road. You get a flat patch of tread, and not only does the tread scrub the road, but when they're fitted with a tube, the tube scrubs the rim. So we've got this creased area on our tube here. As the wheel is rotating, the tube is scrubbing against the inside of the rim, marginally all the time. But there's this constant little walking there the whole time. And quite often you'll pull apart a wheel that has had a tube in it for a long time and the whole inside surface will be polished just from the tube. Normally, correctly fitted to the correct rim, no problem. But when the valve's cocked off on the wrong angle, it actually wears the tube on the creases and it will fail. It's not if it will fail, it's when it will fail. And from experience I've learned 2,000 or 3,000 kilometres down the track, tubes do fail under these situations. Now, who's at fault? The tyre guy that fitted it, you could jump up and down and squeal, but it is ignorance. We have got younger people in the tyre industry that have infinite knowledge about modern cars and modern tyres. How often are they seeing old wheels like this? So as owners of these old cars, we need to be aware that you can't fit tubes into these older tyres. Now, I'm going to have to fix this wheel, so I will strip it down and we'll get the tube out of it naturally. I'll get the tyre patched, I'll get a plug put in that, and I'll clean the rim up, and then I can refit the tyre and it'll all be happy. Now one of the things I don't own is a tyre changer, so we'll be off to my next door neighbours and we'll borrow his to get the wheel stripped down. Now I've also noticed that just letting the air out of this, there was way too much air in it, so if you're getting tyres worked on your cars, have your own tyre gauge and get it checked. Now here's another thing I'll draw to your attention, is when they've taken this apart, there's been a whole lack of care here. They've chopped off the old valve, but whatever tool is used has skidded across the wheel and taken a great chunk out of the aluminium. Now it's a bit upsetting, admittedly it's an old wheel, it's not restored, and I will do it in the future. When I started my trade, it was drummed into all of us in my generation that it didn't matter what condition someone's car was in or what type of car it was, treat it like a new Rolls Royce. Because to the owner of that car, it's pretty special. The owner of this car is pretty special as well. There's the tube, there's the angle of the valve offset to centre, and there's already some crease lines just starting in it just from having been blown up the once. One's just running across there, another one in there. Just faint, that's just starting, would lead to failure. But never even fitted to a car. Look at all this. No attempt at all was made to clean this wheel up. If they'd spent 5 minutes on it with a little clean and strip disc, cleaned all this old tyre off it, refitted the tyre and plugged it, there'd be no more problems. It'd all be perfect. The rim's not pitted or anything like that. It's just lazy repairers. The other problem with the tube is this rim has been machined for the valve to fit into it, and it's got a sharp edge. You can actually wipe your fingers on here and there's a bit of a burr in it there. So the tube would have just chafed away on that, and it was just destined for failure right from the beginning. I've put about 10 minutes effort into this wheel with nothing more than a hand wire brush and a rag with a bit of Prepsol on. Now, a lot of the problem is rubber. Rubber vulcanises onto the rims, and then when you put a new tyre on there, it props the rim, and the vulcanisation just comes from the heat of the tyre running on the wheel, heat from the day where they're left sitting out in the sun and things like that. And a lot of these old sandcast wheels have been on derelict vehicles for some time too, so where they've been left sitting in a paddock for years and years and years, the rubber that's there for a long time tends to stick onto it. So when new tyres are fitted over the top of that, there's no choice but for them to leak. So this is cleaned up, that's a sealable condition. So a new valve in our rim and a repair in the tyre, and we've got that sorted. But let's have a look at the tube again and we'll see why it's not suited to these wheels. Now, firstly, it's the wrong size tube for the application. This one says it's a 155 to a 165 tyre. Well, that's a 185 tyre, so the tube's already stressed past the point that the manufacturer intended it for anyway. But you can see that the valve props out on an angle. Now I'll inflate it and it'll just over pronounce that. Now that's inflated to roughly the size of a 165/13 tyre, and as you can see, the valve cocks out on an angle. So when it's in the wheel, it's designed to go into a steel rim. The tube will conform to the drop centre in the rim, and then you've actually got the tube on the right angle. But when we put it into one of these sandcast wheels, we've actually got to drag the valve back in. We've got a lot of stress in this area around the valve to start with, which will eventually cause a tear in it. But we've also got little creases that appear in here. Because the tube is put into the wheel uninflated, the crease will be in it, and when it pumps up, you can get a little fold in there. I've often taken wheels apart that have had tubes fitted to them in the past, and there's always these little creases behind the valve. Now, if you're an enthusiast and you've got some old sandcast mag wheels on your car, and they have been fitted with tubes, and you want to do something about it, what can you do? Firstly, recognise where the leaks can happen. You've got three places. One, the tyre is going to be the problem. Two, the valve is going to be the problem. Or three, it's the seal between the tyre and the rim. Very rarely you can get a porous rim, but originally all of these wheels were painted in the drop centre area, and that was the last defence. It would seal up any tiny little holes, so we can do that today. If you've got a wheel with a lot of corrosion pitting around the edge, now it's not unusual. These wheels are 40, 50 years old now, and like I said before, some of them have been on derelict cars. If you've got a pitted wheel, sandblast the wheel, high build prime it with a good 2-pack primer, sand it back smooth again and paint it. That will seal, it'll work beautifully. If you've got a problem around the valve area, there are companies out there who will repair these wheels. They'll do a weld if you've got a corrosion issue in there, but it's pretty rare. Normally, all that will be wrong is you'll have a build-up of vulcanised rubber on the rim. Once you've cleaned that off and fitted a new valve, that is sorted. Now here's a wheel I have been restoring for another job, and as you can see, I have prepared all this area in here. Now, this wheel wasn't badly pitted, so all I've done is sandblasted this area, and I've used an industrial paint on it that is a direct metal finish. It's a 2-pack, and being an industrial product, it sets like a rock. It's a very hard, durable smooth finish paint. So this is perfect for this wheel, and all this area in here you can't see, so you can paint the whole lot, seal everything up, and you get this beautiful smooth edge for the tyre to seal against. If we look at the tyre last of all, now in my case I've got a Michelin that's only a few years old. It was bought new and put on the car, but some of us have tracked down really old tyres to get a particular tyre and tread style that matched a 1970s or 1980s design. Now often these tyres have been in storage for a long time, this sealing edge has gone hard and you don't have a lot of choice on them. Old tyres are not a good call on the road. If you've got a tyre that is that old on your collector car, it's a time bomb anyway. Fit new tyres solve the problem. Now, there is a place with our collector cars for inner tubes. They are not evil. Even though I've said all these problems that we're going to have with them with this setup, if you have got tube type cross-ply tyres, you need to run an inner tube, naturally. If you have got true spoke wire wheels on your car, you need to run an inner tube. There is no choice. But these tubes and the rims are designed to run together. If you have got a rim like this one that is designed to run with a tubeless tyre, and in our case we've got a premium tubeless tyre, it's a Michelin, why would you ever put a tube in it? Now, we can't really blame a tyre fitter today for having made this mistake. People of my generation and older are retiring from the industry, and we had this sort of knowledge because we were used to these sorts of wheels. Today's tyre fitters are used to the wheels on modern cars, and they will tell you many things about 18, 19, 22-inch wheels that I don't know because I've had no experience of this. And because this knowledge is now being lost from the tyre services, it comes down to us, the owners of these old cars, to be aware of these issues. And that way, we can be sure that we're not going to be stuck on the side of a road on a hot day with what is really a preventable problem.